Lingering on the theme of smart people, the next two panelists are two of the smartest people I know, and they have created extremely successful companies, not once, but many different types. So what I'm going to try to do now is really find the recipe for the secret sauce of creating globally successful tech companies again and again and again. And who better to do that than serial entrepreneur and super angel Jose Marin. Welcome up on stage, Jose. And last but not least, Martin Varsavsky, the founder of FON and of many other very successful companies. And with... Dame un abrazo. Please have a seat in the sofa. I'll sort of sit down over here to change perspectives. For me, I've been trying to build companies all my life, and I've been in both as investor and a founder of, I think, 22 companies by now, as I said before. But when I look at you guys, it seems so easy, and you seem to sort of pick the cherries all the time. So I want to start, understanding why by hearing a little bit about your background. So tell me your entrepreneurial journey.
First of all, I'm very privileged to sit next to such an entrepreneur like Martin. No? But anyway, it's been a great journey. I co-founded a company called Remate, which was an eBay for Latin America. We ended up losing the battle with a competitor. But eventually they acquired us, we merged, and they took the company public. After that, I started the two legs that I currently have today. On one side, I have an investing leg, where basically I do angel investing on one side. We've done over 150 investments.
And how many of the 150 have gone bad?
Well, I mean, we have exited from 37. Currently, as of
that was
today.
Not the question.
Yeah, about 11 have been losing money investments.
11 out of 150. It should be the other way around statistically, right?
Well, I mean, to put it on perspective, we have a lot of recent investments too, no? So I mean, out of the 150, some of those are pretty new. So we'll see what happens with those. But also on the investing side, we've done a number of co-investments with funds, people that know us throughout our career, and I do all of this with my very good friend and partner, Fabrice Grinda. So, we have some people that know us through our career, and we co-invest with them sometimes in marketplaces, things that we have expertise on. And lastly, we've done a number of secondary transactions. We were investors in Alibaba and a couple of other interesting businesses. Alibaba clearly went public. Some of the other ones we hope that are going to go public as well. And that has been our investment strategy. Happy to elaborate some more later. And then we have a second leg where we basically do project building. So we identify an idea or two per year. We have a group of developers in Eastern Europe. We build the product. We fund the first 2-3 million into those businesses. The entrepreneurs that run them generally work with us before. On the investing side, we give them exposure to what we do, how we do, and then we start to share ideas until we decide to build something. And Fabrice and I, either Fabrice or I, take an active role as chairman where we do some product work, some marketing, unit economics, etc., plus funding the business. No? And we build a number of interesting businesses on that strategy as well.
And every time I meet Jose, I ask him how you're doing. He says, "Oh, we've been very lucky." So it's serial lucky. Somebody else who's been serial lucky and also extremely good at seeing things and acting upon them is you, Martin. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial life.
Well, I have lived a third of my life in Argentina, a third in the US, and a third in Spain by now, and I have been active my professional career in the US and in Europe. And I have built 5 companies that got to be worth over 700 million by the time I sold them. I also built one where I lost 200 million, one of the first cloud computing. That's before you asked the question about the things that didn't go well. So I lost 200 million in one, 50 million of my own money, but the other ones went pretty well. These are Viatel, Jastel, Ya.com, Eolia, an alternative energy operator, and now FON, the largest Wi-Fi network in the world. And so I've been, let's say, over a longer period of time than Jose, but with many less companies, very focused in making them a success, sort of a more concentrated strategy where I am the CEO of these companies for 7 years, the shortest 2 years. I am a founder CEO, a serial founder CEO.
But you also have a business angel activity where you picked some of the most sort of amazing companies that you've been in as an investor.
Yeah, that's true. I do some investing as an angel investor, but not with a fund, but just with the money that I made from the exits of my companies. I invest in relatively few companies, maybe right now a portfolio of maybe 14 companies. And yeah, some of them have done poorly, but some have done incredibly well. Like I was investor in Tumblr when it was worth $2 million in the first round. That was one of the biggest successes, but I was also an investor in Smart Things last year that in the first round, and in a year and a half, it sold to Samsung very nicely, around 200 million. And yes, so I follow my passion for products into investing.
So now that we've established that you're serial lucky, could you tell us the secret sauce? How do you what can we learn from that? Or if you would be teaching the audience here in a class on how to A, build entrepreneurial companies, and B, invest in them, what do you look for when you build companies?
No, I was just going to say that lately I've been inspired by what Jose and Fabrice are doing, and I have been interested, because before I had a lot of discipline. I would say one of the sources was not to start anything else until I finish something. Be sharp, focus on one thing. And yes, when you look back, you look at 5 companies, but if you think that these 5 or 6 companies started in 1990, so then you say, well, it's 24 years, so it shows a lot of focus on each one. But I do like the way Fabrice and Jose do it. I couldn't do it at the scale they do it, because it requires like simultaneous multitasking. Like the level of multitasking that they have, I couldn't do. But I have been thinking about 2 or 3 projects that I could do in a similar fashion of what they do, which is they identify an area and then identify a CEO, they fund the CEO, and they try to make the company successful. It is well, we thought about doing one of them together, so I think the formula is to be focused, but also to choose well the sectors that are about to take off.
How do you do that?
Well, I think it's part science and part intuition, but generally what I see. I mean, I could give you an example of a company that I'm incubating or starting now in Spain, which is called a baby insurance company. I'm a father of 6 children, so it's not a problem that I need baby insurance. But I think women today need baby insurance, and they need baby insurance because their fertility window is being squeezed and squeezed. Women used to live 40 years, now they live 82, 83, but they used to have their children at 20, now they have the children between 30 and 35, 40, but fertility almost disappears between 35 and 40, while the life of a woman, like a 40-year-old woman, is very young in everything but her eggs or ovules. And so what I'm working on is an egg freezing company that would allow, because a woman of 50, her uterus is perfect. She can have very healthy children. In fact, a woman of 50 who has eggs from when she was 30 has a greater chance of having healthier babies than a woman who's 38 using her own eggs. And so I'm using this as an example of something that just doesn't make sense to me. I believe in gender equality. I have 3 boys and 3 girls, and I believe they should have an equal chance. And I don't want to see my girls marrying an idiot when they're 34. So I try to identify a problem and find a solution.
Well, I think that in my case, let's try to separate.
Wow, now it's time for a real journalist here. You know what that is? This is the fearsome Mike Butcher from TechCrunch. I leave the stage to you.
Thank you.
Is this thing on? I don't know if is this thing on? Can you hear me?
Are you
switched on or not? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Well, goodness me, it sounds like Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. What I'm interested in for you chaps, let's try this over here. What is what the heck is this? This is a sort of bizarre scenario. I'll put this on here, put my feet up. This is like a Victorian lounge. Sherlock Holmes, where is he? Should be coming in here. Right, chaps, right. Enough of this optimistic crap. I'm British. And pessimism is my stock in trade. It's raining in London at the moment. I love London. And it's sunny in Miami, but who cares? I've got a question for you, sir, that you lost $35 million, I think, in 1998 and nearly went bankrupt with Viatel and Jazztel. How on earth did you get back from that position?
No, it's true. In 98, I was bankrupt, or technically bankrupt. It was probably one of the most difficult episodes in my professional life. I basically had Viatel that had gone public, was worth hundreds of millions, and instead of selling my shares in Viatel to start Jazztel, I made the foolish mistake of borrowing against Viatel to start Jazztel. And then in 98, I don't know if you remember, but there was a crisis where the market crashed of a long-term capital. It was a combination of some things that were happening in Russia with a big fund that went down, and the shares of Viatel went from 20 to 4 in like a week. And the banks, UBS, the Swiss bank that had lended me the money to build Jazztel, came calling on the loan. Now, what happened that weekend is I actually went cycling, which is my sport. I still do that, and I was mountain biking outside of Madrid. I was so worried about this that I had a terrible accident. I fell mountain biking. They had to bring an ambulance up the mountain to get me. And so when the bankers came to collect, I couldn't sign anything, basically. And it was not staged, okay? It was
there you
not
are, ladies and gentlemen. If your bank loan is due, just have an accident. Very simple.
I had an accident, but it was not staged. And so
according to you,
they really saw me. They really saw the condition I was in. And my banker at that time, Alfonso Gomez Acebo, gave me a break. And he said, look, okay, we'll deal with this when you come out of the hospital. Now, the crazy thing was that the crisis was so short-lived that it took me 2 weeks to get out of the hospital, and in 2 weeks the shares were at 12. And at 12 I was solvent again, and I didn't need to pay the loan because the margin call was at 4 but not at 12. But I was so scared that I sold, I paid, and I never took a loan again.
You managed to get out of it.
Yeah, I got out of that.
Well, it's the old adage, isn't it? When you owe the bank $35 million, you effectively own the bank, don't you? Jose, you're doing a lot of investing. I would call it spray and pray, perhaps. Don't you think there's going to be a market correction, following my pessimistic theme here, next year? There's valuations of these companies of sky high, all these unicorns. Everyone wants to be $1 billion company now, or billion plus. Don't you think there's going to be a correction next year and a lot of people are going to lose their money?
What I think is going to happen is, let's be realistic. When we went through the process in 1999 or 2000, companies had no revenue. Today we are talking of a company like Uber that has passed in 4 years from 0 revenue to 12 billion. So there is real value. So is there opportunity? I think is massive, and I think that the transformation that we're going to see in the economy for the next 5 years is really big. Now, to your point, is there going to be a correction? I think that there's prices that are being paid for some of these companies that are high, because venture capitalists have a lot of money, and basically what they do is they have to ensure that they will be in the next Facebook or in the next Google or whatever, and they don't care so much about paying a high price. What I really think is going to happen is that thanks to the liquidation preference protection that a lot of these investors have, you know, they might end up not losing money, but they won't make as much money as their investors expect. And what I think is going to happen is that when they go out and they raise their next funds, there's going to be less capital available. They're going to raise smaller funds. The industry will continue to consolidate, and that will basically create some stress on price. So yes, do I think it's going to be a correction? Yes, I think there's going to be a correction. I don't think it's going to be imminent. I'm in general nature a very big optimist, and I think that there's a lot of things that are happening in the world, you know, and we can go through some of them, you know, that signal that major breakthroughs are happening. I mean, things like how long are people going to be living? I think there's a number of developments that are pointing out to the situation that if a couple of these breakthroughs happen, people might end up living 120 years quite soon. No, I mean, things like cars that don't require a driver. I mean, technology for screening health and so on. So I'm, in general nature, I'm an optimist. I think that there is some correction, but I think it's very different nature than what we've seen in the 1999-2000 crisis. No?
Isn't the problem, though, that there's going to be both a market correction, do you think, Martin, or not?
Well, I think there's companies and companies like Fab.com that traded for $1 billion and now are selling for 15 million. There's bubbles. There's some companies that were sold, like WhatsApp, that sold for 19 billion or 17 billion, depending on how you look at it, that in a different market, there's no way that WhatsApp would have sold for that money. There's other companies like Uber who are getting crazy valuations, but not so crazy if you look at their revenues, their revenue growth, their margins. And then you have companies like Apple who are trading at relatively very low multiples, 12 times earnings. For example, Apple in the last quarter made more profits than Amazon has ever made since 1999, right? And you say, well, where's the bubble here? Why is Amazon trading for 160 billion? Apple, the most valuable company in the world, but then you say, well, it's also the most profitable company in the world. So I agree with Jose that there's individual situations when you just can't believe what people paid for. Like, I couldn't believe what Facebook paid for WhatsApp. But I believe that when Google invested 350 million in Uber at a 10 billion valuation that everybody else thought it was crazy, I had seen some of the numbers of what Travis was doing, and I thought, that's not crazy. Uber is bringing an incredible transformation into the transportation of the planet. So it's more about specific companies. And then on looking on the horizon, is there anything that will make the world blow up? I don't think so. I don't think something like Ukraine will make the world blow up. Or I don't see anything that of the crisis that we see now, the Islamic State or Ukraine or the North Koreans or the Chinese and the Japanese that don't get along. Like, I see problems. I don't see any one of these blow out of proportion.
What about a dirty bomb over New York carried by a drone?
No, it doesn't need to be carried by a drone. It's too sci-fi. But the first part is doable. And yes, there's always the outlying event that a gloomy person like you
Oxford
would focus on.
Oxford University recently came out with some research that said that 50% of everyday jobs will be gone in the next 20 years and taken over by robots and artificial intelligence. Don't you think that there's going to be a step change at some point when all of a sudden all those driverless cars, all those Uber cars are now driverless and there are no taxis anymore with humans in them? And
well, so far, the two countries that have the most drones and robots are Japan and Germany, and the two countries with the lowest unemployment in the world.
I think that's a very valid point. I mean, we need to think differently and a different paradigm. It's true that there's going to be a bunch of jobs that are going to change. And my view and perspective on this is that, yes, we might end up having less drivers, but you're going to be creating opportunities in other areas. So I think that as long as you create, wealth and growth, there's going to be space for people, and there's going to be more opportunity, and I really believe so.
And on that positive note, I want my microphone back. On the positive note, thank you very much, Mike Butcher.
Okay.
And if you want to pitch your company to Mike or any great news, he will be sitting later this afternoon and hearing your 2-minute pitches for TechCrunch. So that will be going on this afternoon.
I'll
thank
be
you.
doing it 3:15.
3:15.
Right.
Thank you very much, Mike Butcher.
Cheers. See you later.
Martin, no, yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Martin, I'd like to ask you, you got your own song going out as well. I want to ask you, what's most exciting for you right now, and what's all this rave about the gramophone?
Yeah, well, we designed the gramophone and launched it a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's a product people are loving, and we're super excited by it.
What is it?
Well, the gramophone is a little box that turns any sound system into a cloud music player.
Great. So it's a Wi-Fi router with a taste for music.
Well, we work with actually Miami-based company Wawa or service Wawa, Damian, and we work with Spotify, and it's basically an interaction between Facebook that allows anyone who comes to your house, instead of saying, what's your password, you say, look, we're friends on Facebook, you can have access to my Wi-Fi, and you can play music here.
And I think what everybody's thinking about right now, how much is it?
$69, but Amazon, you can get it at Amazon.
Cool. and what are you really passionate about right now?
Well, I think I've always pretty much been passionate for the same things, and since I'm 4 years, I have always loved music, and I played the piano for many, many years, and that's something that I continue to do. I compose music besides just playing some classical, which is really what I love. But at this stage, I'm composing music, and I'm getting some of this music, played out and arranged by arrangers to make it for orchestra.
This room is extremely well designed for playing music, and we have a
totally
piano over
agree.
here.
Yes.
Would you like to give it a go?
Absolutely. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play something that I composed. It's very simple, very short, but it will give a flavor of what I'm passionate about.
Perfect. Give it up for Jose Marin.
Gracias.
Thank you very much, Jose.
Thank you.
Very much, Martin
Thank you, Ola.
Varsavsky.
Muy bueno, nunca te
Gracias,
había escuchado.
Martín.
And then now I know my
Exacto,
my
que esto-
inbox is going to be spammed with emails saying, "Is he married?"